And
You were a flying nun,
I
which was
a
clearly written
flying
on
nun,
acid.
But when I had,
That pitch
there
was actually
no acid involved.
Do you ever wonder if someone back in the 80s made a bet to see what's the craziest show they could get on the air? Because that's the only way to explain some of these sitcoms. These aren't just forgotten shows. They're legends of bad ideas, tales of concepts so outlandish they defy all logic. These are the 13 weird sitcoms that never should have existed. 1. The Flying Nun.
Do you know of any reason that could be causing that, Sister Jacqueline?
Well, things have been a bit up in the air around here lately.
We have to kick things off with a show that sounds completely made up, a true giant in the world of bizarre TV ideas. The Flying Nun starred a super young and bubbly Sally Field as Sister Bertrille. She was a new nun at the Convent Santanco in Puerto Rico. She was sweet, full of energy, and as the show loved to remind us, she only weighed 90 pounds. Now, here is the wild part. Her tiny size, plus the big, stiff, wing-shaped hat she wore, called a cornet, worked together to create the perfect conditions for flight. Whenever a strong gust of wind came along, she would lift right off the ground and start flying. The entire point of this sitcom, which lasted for 3 whole seasons and 82 episodes, was about a nun who could fly. It wasn't because of superpowers or a gift from above. Nope, it was all because of the strange physics of her hat. Each week, Sister Bertrille would accidentally get carried away by the wind into some silly adventure. This drove the other nuns, especially the head nun, Reverend Mother, absolutely crazy. The Reverend Mother was stern but had a good heart, and she was always trying to keep Sister Bertrille's flights a secret. She treated it less like a miracle and more like a really weird, breezy problem. The special effects they used to make her fly were classic 1960s stuff. You could often see Sally Field hanging from wires on a crane in front of a fake-looking sky background. It was a show that asked you to believe something totally impossible, even for the goofy time it was made in. Truth be told, the fact that it lasted so long is a huge credit to how charming Sally Field was. It remains a show that feels like a shared, wacky dream for anyone who remembers it. But as strange as a high-flying nun is, it was at least a cheerful idea. What happens when a network decides to make a comedy about a place known for being anything but cheerful? Second, Mr. Smith.
$100 altogether. Well, it's not too promising, but here's my plan. I'm suggesting we pool and gamble with it until we raise all the money we need.
If you thought a flying nun was out there, buckle up. The idea behind Mr. Smith is so deeply, profoundly weird, it almost sounds like a joke. Imagine a scientist working with an orangutan named Cha-Cha. Through some crazy experiments with a special drink and a brain-zapping machine, he finds out that Cha-Cha is a super genius with an IQ of 256. And even more amazing, the orangutan can talk. Cha-Cha, who now likes to be called Mr. Smith, becomes a huge celebrity overnight. He's super smart, speaks very clearly, and has a simple, wise way of looking at the world that humans just can't seem to manage. Now, here's where the story goes from weird to absolutely unbelievable. Mr. Smith becomes so famous for his smarts and common-sense answers to big problems that he gets a job in Washington, D.C. He becomes a political advisor, working for a group that helps the government make big decisions. Let that sink in. This was a TV show on every week about a talking orangutan in a fancy suit solving America's biggest political messes. The show used a real orangutan for the body and a puppet head for the talking scenes. In a typical episode, some stuffy politician would be pulling his hair out over a difficult problem. Then, Mr. Smith, after calmly peeling a banana, would point out a simple, brilliant solution that no one else saw. This big idea was a huge gamble that just didn't pay off. It was too weird to be a show about politics and had too much talking for a family show. It was a high-concept idea that confused almost everyone. The network pulled the plug after only 13 episodes had aired between September and December of 1983. Its totally bonkers idea of an ape running the country has been pretty much forgotten, a footnote in TV history. A talking ape in Washington is pretty strange, but it's still a fantasy. What about a show that took a real-life Western hero and turned him into a complete goofball right in the middle of the Wild West? 3. Best of the West.
My wife found something in the cabin when we were moving in. I think it's gold dust. I'm sure you'll want to return it to the previous owner.
Passionately.
For decades, the Western was a super serious and popular genre on TV. Shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza were all about tough, heroic cowboys and dramatic shootouts. So, in 1981, making a sitcom that was a straight-up silly parody of the whole Western idea was a truly mind-blowing move. And that show was Best of the West. It was about a guy named Sam Best, a soldier from the Civil War who was also a total klutz and hated fighting. He moves his family from the city out to the Wild West. Through a bunch of silly accidents, everyone in town gets the wrong idea and thinks he's a deadly fast gunslinger. So, they make him the sheriff of a messy little town called Copper Creek. Sam was the total opposite of a typical Western hero. He was clumsy, terrible with a gun, and would much rather talk his way out of a problem than get into a fight. This really frustrated the townspeople, who were used to a more violent way of solving things. His wife, Elvira, was a sassy Southern lady, and his son, Daniel, was a smart-aleck kid. The main bad guy was the greedy and corrupt saloon owner, Parker Tillman, who was played perfectly by the actor Leonard Fry. The show was a smart and gentle poke at all the old Western stereotypes. It felt a lot like a family-friendly version of a Mel Brooks movie, like Blazing Saddles. Critics actually liked it a lot for its clever writing and fun humor. It even got nominated for an Emmy Award. But for some reason, it just never caught on with a big audience. It was canceled after just one season of 22 episodes. It remains a forgotten gem, a brave and hilarious attempt to bring movie-style parody to primetime TV. Parodying a whole genre is a big swing. But what could be an even bigger gamble? How about taking two minor characters from one of the biggest hit shows on TV and ripping them away to give them their own series?
4th.
The Ropers.
Stanley, you embarrassed me so at the funeral.
I couldn't help dropping a wreath.
Well, you didn't have to run after it.
The mind-blowing thing about The Ropers isn't its story, which was pretty normal for a sitcom. It's the totally baffling choice a TV network made to create it, a move that ended up hurting one of the most popular shows on television. Stanley and Helen Roper were the grumpy, always bickering landlords on the smash hit show Three's Company. They were the perfect side characters, reacting to all the crazy stuff happening with their young tenants, Jack, Janet, and Chrissy. Their funny, frustrated relationship was a key part of what made Three's Company so hilarious. They were played by Norman Fell and Audra Lindley, who were amazing in the roles. Then, a TV executive, probably blinded by the amazing ratings of Three's Company, had a wild idea. He decided that these two characters, whose whole job was to be the grumpy neighbors, could be the stars of their very own show. So, they were spun off into a new series. In The Ropers, Stanley and Helen sell their apartment building and move to a super fancy, rich neighborhood. The whole show was about their down-to-earth style clashing with their new, snobby neighbors. On paper, it seemed like an easy win. But here's the problem. When you took the Ropers away from Jack, Janet, and Chrissy, they weren't as funny. They were just a miserable couple who complained a lot. The one joke about their relationship, which was hilarious in small doses on Three's Company, got old and even a little sad when it was the focus of the entire show. The series didn't get good ratings and was canceled after 2 seasons. The really crazy part is that the network took 2 key ingredients out of a hit show, which made the original show weaker and created a flop at the same time. It was a huge mistake that fans still talk about today. Spinning off the wrong characters is a bad idea, But at least it's an understandable mistake. The next show on our list, however, had a premise so strange and ahead of its time, it's hard to understand how it was ever made at all. The Ugliest Girl in Town.
That's what got me into this mess in the first place. It's only 10 pounds, $24. It won't break us. You do it once more and I'll beat you to death with my purse.
Let's hop in our time machine and go back to the late 1960s for this next one. The idea for this show is so uniquely bizarre, and its gender-bending concept so ahead of its time that it feels more like a wacky 80s movie. The show is called The Ugliest Girl in Town. It's about a talent agent in Hollywood who sees a picture of a hippie with shaggy hair in a magazine from London. He becomes totally convinced that this person is the perfect new face for fashion, the next big female model for the swinging 60s. The only problem is, the hippie in the photo is actually a dude named Timothy. The agent saw the picture right after Timothy got stuck in a rainstorm, which made his long hair look super feminine. Timothy really needs money so he can move to Hollywood and be with his actress girlfriend. So he agrees to this crazy plan. He puts on a wig and a mini dress, starts calling himself Timmy, and somehow becomes the hottest fashion model on the planet. The whole show was about him desperately trying to keep his real identity a secret from everyone. He had to hide it from the public, his modeling agency, and even his own girlfriend, who just thought Timmy was her boyfriend's really attractive sister. The show was basically a one-joke idea that was both confusing and probably pretty uncomfortable for people back in 1968. It was a comedy that explored ideas about gender that most of America was absolutely not ready for. The title itself was a joke because the character was supposed to be beautiful as a woman. The show was canceled after only one season of 20 episodes. It's been almost completely wiped from TV history, a truly mind-blowing concept that was simply born in the wrong decade. Pretending to be someone else for a whole series is a tough trick to pull off. But what if two people weren't just pretending, but actually switched bodies and had to live each other's lives every single day? 6. Turnabout.
It can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening. Trust me, it's happening. I am in your body and you're in mine.
Well, Sam, I want my body back.
The body swap comedy has always been a popular idea for movies. We got classics like Freaky Friday, where the surprise and fun of the switch can easily fill a 90-minute story. So, in 1979, the TV network NBC, which was desperate for a hit show, decided to take that big movie idea and try to stretch it into a weekly sitcom. The show was called Turnabout. It was about a rich married couple, Sam and Penny, who were always arguing. One day, they magically switch bodies after they both touch a strange little statue in their house. Suddenly, Sam, a tough sports writer, finds himself in his wife's body. That role was played by Sharon Gless, who would later become a huge star on the cop show Cagney and Lacey. Sam had to deal with her important job as a boss at a makeup company. Meanwhile, Penny found herself in her husband's body, trying to act tough in the very macho world of sports journalism. The first episode was pretty funny, with all the classic jokes you would expect, like a man trying to put on mascara or a woman trying to figure out how to use a men's restroom. But here was the huge, glaring problem that nobody seemed to think about. After that first episode, the show had absolutely nowhere to go. The fun of the body swap idea wore off almost right away. As a weekly show, it was a dead end. How many weeks can you watch the same two people complain about being in each other's bodies before it just gets boring? The writers ran out of ideas so fast, and the stories became more and more desperate and silly. The show was canceled after only 7 episodes aired, a fascinating and total failure that proved some ideas are just too small for a whole series. A magical statue causing chaos is one thing, but what about a ghost? Not a scary one, but a glamorous movie star ghost who decides to become a teenager's personal life coach. 7. Jennifer Slept Here.
No, go. I dropped 2 easy pop flies and struck out 3 times.
I know, I saw it on TV. Was it fun?
The 1980s were totally obsessed with family sitcoms that mixed everyday life with something supernatural. And Jennifer Slept Here is a perfect example of this weird formula. The show was about the ghost of a famous and beautiful movie star from Hollywood's golden age named Jennifer Farrell. She was played by the very lively actress Ann Gillian. After her untimely passing, her friendly ghost decides to stick around and haunt her old mansion in Beverly Hills. A new family, the Elliots, moves in from New York, and they have no idea that their new house comes with a ghost roommate. But it all comes down to this one strange twist, which was the entire point of the show and also its biggest problem. For some reason that the show never bothers to explain, only the family's nerdy, awkward teenage son, Joey, can see and hear Jennifer's ghost. This set up the same bizarre situation every single week. Joey would have a normal teenage problem, like dealing with a bully or being too nervous to talk to a girl. Then, Jennifer would use her ghost powers, like walking through walls or making things float, to try and help him out. Of course, this meant that to everyone else, like his family and all the kids at school, Joey just looked like a total weirdo. He was constantly talking to himself, reacting to invisible things happening, and seemingly making objects fly around the room on their own. The mind-blowing part is trying to imagine the meeting where someone pitched this idea. It was a show where the main character was guaranteed to look completely crazy to every other person on screen for the whole series. It was a sweet, harmless sitcom, but its main idea was so strange and limited that it was canceled after only 13 episodes. A ghost only one person can see is a weird guardian angel. But what if your mentor wasn't a ghost, but one of the most powerful wizards in history, who now spends his days fixing cars? 8. Mr. Merlin.
My father was an incubus, my mother was a Welsh princess. I am a sorcerer, a magician, a witch.
The story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is a huge, serious, and epic legend. It's a tale full of magic, bravery, and betrayal. So, of course, in 1981, the TV network CBS decided to take one of its most important characters, the Wizard Merlin, and turn him into a goofy sitcom character. In the show Mr. Merlin, the famous wizard is still alive after hundreds of years. He's now living a quiet life in modern-day San Francisco, running a car repair shop under the name Max Merlin. He's getting tired of living forever and needs to find someone to pass his magic powers to before he can finally retire. He finds his student in a kid named Zach, a totally average, kind of clumsy teenager who just happens to wander into his garage. The show was basically a mix of The Sorcerer's Apprentice and a regular high school comedy. Every week, Zach would have some normal teenage problem. Maybe he had a big test he forgot to study for, or he really wanted to buy a cool car. He would try to use a magic spell he wasn't skilled enough to handle to solve his problem. The magic would always backfire in a funny way, like making a car shrink down to the size of a toy car. Then, Merlin would have to step in, roll his eyes like a 1,500-year-old wizard who has seen it all, and use his real magic to clean up the mess. The mind-blowing idea of turning one of the most powerful wizards in literature into a tired old mechanic and mentor to a goofy teenager was pure 80s gold. The show was pretty charming, mostly thanks to the wonderful actor Barnard Hughes, who played Merlin. However, the show's story was the same every week, and it got old fast. It was canceled after just one season of 22 episodes. An ancient wizard in modern times is a wild concept. But what if the main character wasn't from the past, but from a whole other planet, trying to survive the weirdest place of all, an American high school? 9. The Powers of Matthew Starr.
David, the bus went through a fence and then practically stopped in midair.
I don't remember any of it.
This next show was a mind-blowing mix of a high school drama, a science fiction adventure, and a comedy about being a fish out of water. It was the perfect storm of every popular TV idea from the 1980s. The show was The Powers of Matthew Starr. The story is about an alien prince from a faraway planet called Quadris. After a scary alien race took over his homeworld, he was sent to Earth as a baby. He was raised in secret by his guardian, Walt, who waited for his amazing powers to fully develop. Now he's a teenager named Matthew, and he's trying to get through the chaos of American high school while also training to one day go back to his planet and lead a rebellion to free his people. Talk about a lot of pressure. Matthew had a bunch of cool powers, like moving things with his mind, called telekinesis, and even leaving his body to travel as a spirit, called astral projection. His guardian, Walt, who was played by Louis Gossett Jr., an Oscar-winning actor, was supposed to teach him how to use these powers for good. So one minute, Matthew would be dealing with a surprise quiz in his history class or trying to ask a girl to the school dance. The next minute, he would be lifting a car with his mind or fighting an alien assassin who was disguised as a substitute teacher. The show was a wild mix of different styles that never really decided what it wanted to be. It had the excitement of a sci-fi show, but the light and funny feeling of a teen drama. But here's a truly crazy part of the story. The star of the show, Peter Barton, was badly burned in an accident on set when some special effects fire went wrong. The whole production had to be shut down for months while he recovered. It's a forgotten show from a time when a story about an alien prince going to a high school pep rally seemed like a totally normal idea for TV. An alien hiding in high school is one thing, but what if a man could do something even crazier, like transform his own body, not into another person, but into any animal he wanted? 10. Manimal.
Look, I don't know how you could have overheard any conversation.
Trust me, we have very sophisticated methods of surveillance these days. The important thing is, you seem to be in a lot of trouble, and I want to help.
Okay, while this show wasn't technically a sitcom, its idea is so deeply and hilariously mind-blowing that it absolutely has to be on this list. Manimal represents the very peak of crazy 80s TV ideas. It was a show so ridiculous that it has become a famous legend. The opening of the show explains it all with a very serious voice. Dr. Jonathan Chase, wealthy, young, handsome. A man with the brightest of futures. A man with the darkest of pasts. From Africa's deepest jungles to civilization's highest peaks, he is the master of the secrets that divide man from animal. He is Manimal. The show was about a British professor of criminology at New York University. He had a mystical power that let him transform into any animal he could think of. He would use this amazing ability to help the police solve crimes. For example, he might turn into a hawk to spy on the bad guys from way up in the sky, or he might become a fierce Black Panther to chase them down a dark alley. The scenes where he transformed were made by the legendary special effects artist Stan Winston. They had glowing eyes and rippling skin effects that were somehow both cheesy and actually kind of creepy at the same time. But the truly mind-blowing part is that the show took itself completely seriously. It was presented as a straight-faced crime drama, not a comedy. The idea was so completely silly that the show became a legendary flop. It was canceled after only 8 episodes were made. Its legacy today is that of one of the most wonderfully bizarre TV shows ever created. It's the perfect punchline that shows off the anything-goes attitude of 80s television. A man who turns into animals is wild, but he was at least a real person. What if the hero wasn't a person at all, but a glowing hologram that jumped out of a computer? 11th.
Automan.
You must be Walter Neviker.
How did you know that?
It's on the programming you fed into my system. I must say, Walter, you're very good. Very good indeed.
In the same year and on the same network as Manimal, Automan was another mind-blowing, high-concept action show that also had a funny side. It was a very obvious attempt to copy the amazing visual style of the popular Disney movie Tron. The idea was this. Walter Nebuchar is a nerdy and shy police department computer programmer who his bosses never pay attention to. One night, he creates a super advanced computer program. This program generates a crime-fighting hologram named Automan, who can actually leave the computer world and exist in the real world as a solid person. Automan was basically a living video game character. He was made of pure energy and wore a glowing suit with circuit patterns all over it, looking like he just walked off the set of Tron. He had a sidekick named Cursor, which was a floating, sparkly point of light that could draw things into existence out of thin air. If Automan and Walter needed a car, Cursor would draw a glowing Lamborghini, called the Autocar, that could make impossible 90-degree turns at super high speed. If they needed a helicopter or a plane, Cursor would just draw one for them. The show was a huge spectacle of early computer-generated effects and tons of glowing blue light. It was goofy, it was colorful, and its whole idea was a pure 80s video game fantasy come to life. Just like its bizarre cousin Manimal, it was way too strange and expensive to keep on the air. It was canceled after only 13 episodes. But today, it's remembered as a beloved cult classic because of its pure, unfiltered, creative weirdness. A digital hero is pretty out there, but sometimes the weirdest power isn't about technology or magic, but something much, much smaller. 12. Whoops.
The world was destroyed and we're the survivors.
Mr. Connors.
What?
No,
what is
this
that?
is not the time.
You might think a sitcom about the end of the world would be dark and depressing, but in 1991, the Fox network decided to make it hilarious. The show was called Whoops, and its premise is one of the most jarringly cheerful takes on a terrible situation ever. The story begins when two young kids playing with a toy soldier accidentally set off a real nuclear missile. This single event causes a worldwide apocalypse, wiping out almost all of humanity. The show picks up with the 6 survivors who just happened to be together when it happened. These survivors, now living in an abandoned farmhouse in a beautiful green valley, have to figure out how to rebuild society. The group included a stuffy stockbroker, a free-spirited feminist, a brainy scientist, a sassy woman who worked at a makeup counter, a homeless man, and the grown-up version of the kid who started the whole mess. The comedy was supposed to come from these very different people clashing as they tried to start over. For example, they would have debates about what kind of government to create or argue about whose turn it was to go look for canned food. They even found a talking chicken at one point. The truly mind-blowing part of Whoops was the extreme clash in tone. It was a silly, goofy, slapstick comedy set against the backdrop of global annihilation. The characters were cracking jokes while the world they knew was gone forever. It was an incredibly dark idea played for lighthearted laughs, which made a lot of people uncomfortable. The show was canceled after only 10 episodes, leaving it as a bizarre and forgotten attempt to find humor in the most unfunny situation imaginable. Making a joke out of the apocalypse is in poor taste. But what if a show tried to make a joke out of something even more sensitive, like one of history's most monstrous figures? 13. Heil Honey, I'm Home.
Oh, tonight you were making schnitzel. What a jerk! You must be real mad at me, honey. I'm a very, very bad Hitler.
This next show is not just weird, it is widely considered one of the most offensive and poorly judged ideas in the history of television. It's so infamous that it's almost unbelievable it ever got made. In 1990, a British TV channel aired a sitcom called Heil Honey, I'm Home. The show was supposed to be a parody of classic sweet American sitcoms from the 1950s, like I Love Lucy. The unbelievable and shocking part was who the main characters were. The show was about a fictional version of Adolf Hitler and his partner, Eva Braun, living in a suburban neighborhood. Their next-door neighbors were a Jewish couple named Arnie and Rosa Goldenstein. The entire premise was that Hitler, portrayed as a typical grumpy sitcom dad, just wanted a quiet life, but was constantly annoyed by his wacky neighbors who kept popping over to borrow things. The title itself was a takeoff on the classic sitcom line, "Honey, I'm Home. The show tried to use the familiar, comforting style of an old sitcom to make jokes about one of the most horrible figures in human history. The laugh track played over scenes where these characters would have silly arguments about dinner or house guests. The mind-blowing part is that anyone, anywhere, thought this was a good idea. The backlash was immediate and massive. People were rightfully horrified and disgusted. The channel that aired it was flooded with complaints. The show was so controversial that it was canceled after only the very first episode aired. 8 episodes were filmed, but the other 7 have never been shown to the public. It remains a legendary example of a comedy concept that crossed every possible line of good taste. Trying to make evil funny is a terrible idea. Let's move to something a little less heavy, but just as strange, a show that took 2 guys and literally shot them into the stars.